We need.
The ISD, Dallas County.
Secretary says we still need one.
That is like the name for it.
Oh, so there is a good team here, but not in the room. On staff. Yay, we're good.
Well, do we need to go there? Or-
No, wait, so, but they are nice. They're very nice.
Okay, all right. Any other conflicts of interest?
Did you get mine?
Yes, ma'am. Okay, we do have a public comment from Tori, from Child Care Group. If you,
Good afternoon, workforce board members, and it's so good to see everyone in the afternoon today. So this time, as you all will see in the board packet that you got today, we are proud to be reporting an impressive increase in the number of Texas Rising Star providers in Dallas County on this page, thanks in part to the increase in the state's TRS assessors who are coming to perform assessments on our child care centers, and this is great news. Now, an important part of any program's quality rating depends on the quality of the teachers, and that in turn depends upon the professional development training that they receive. In Texas, the minimum standards require that a child care provider receive 24 hours of continuing education annually, and directors of centers have to have 30 hours. But that is just a minimum standard, and at Child Care Group, we want to make sure that we're providing much more intentional and intensive training for our providers. So as part of our quality contract with Workforce Solutions, we provide professional development training opportunities throughout the year as lunch and learns, evening programs, weekend programs, both virtually and in person, to try to accommodate the varying needs of all the providers that are in the program. Our training curriculum is very intentional. Topics are determined both by the needs identified by the Child Care Group mentors who help the providers understand what skills they need to develop, as well as what the providers themselves tell us they want and need to learn. We use our own master trainers on staff, as well as those who are registered on the Texas and National Teacher Training Registry. And all training programs that we provide are directly connected to the Texas Rising Star categories, especially category 2 related to teacher-child interactions. There are 2 examples of these trainings, and I want to just highlight those for you this past month. As you can see in the color picture on the front of your board packet, on August 26th, Workforce Solutions Dallas partnered with the North Central Texas and Tarrant County Workforce Boards for a first ever tri-board training program held at Globe Life Park. And we were so glad to be part of Team Red, which was joining Lori and her team of Workforce Solutions Dallas to help present 41 different training sessions over the course of the full day. These providers were overjoyed to be in Globe Life Park. For some, it was their first time ever to be there. It was a tremendous opportunity for them, a beautifully executed event, and it gave them all 5.5 hours of the needed training program. We had over 800 providers in attendance, and of course, Dallas County providers outnumbered all the others. So we're proud of the turnout for that. So of course, we're not just a little competitive, right? So then we followed that training up on September the 9th. We hosted our 2nd annual inclusion conference with Child Care Group. We held it at Pegasus Park, which we could use at no cost, and funded by Workforce Solutions and private philanthropy. We offered over 200 providers, which was a standing room only crowd, a full day of additional professional development training on tips and trainings they need to serve children who present with developmental delays. You all probably understand that in the wake of the pandemic, we have seen a huge uptick in the number of children who present at our programs with different kinds of developmental delays, behavioral and mental health issues. So we are trying very hard to equip and train those teachers in how to address those challenging behaviors and how to really work with the children in their programs. So we've increased these trainings on inclusion topics to equip providers with the skills they need to serve these children to connect them and their parents to early childhood intervention strategies. And also, when it's time for them to transition to kindergarten, we help smooth the transition so that they qualify for Dallas ISD inclusion services. We hope to share more of our efforts at future meetings, but I'm really proud to report to you that we're working hard to meet the needs of providers, parents, and children by delivering highly tailored, very intentional professional development training to help elevate the quality of all children's experiences in Dallas County. We thank you so much for the opportunity to serve in this role. Thank you.
Thank you, Tori. Welcome, Bill. While you're away, I appointed you to 7 committees, so.
I second that.
So, speaking of committees, you'll recall that, we met offsite for offsite planning. We formed, 3 groups. And, we'll call them focus groups, and one of them is governance. And Joanne has been leading that. So Joanne, would you mind giving us an update on the governance committee?
Of course, thank
Sure.
you, Carter.
Focus area.
And on behalf of the committee, I'm really happy to give this report. We gave a little bit at our last meeting. So the goal of our governance committee is to review and then discuss and then ultimately to present a recommendation to the full board for the best way for the board to function going forward from a governance perspective. As many of you probably know, really going back to 1996, as a result of the work done by the then board, the Carver governance model was adopted to guide how our board functioned, and that continues in place today. Out of that work came a governance plan, and of course, we also have bylaws that govern our work, and the bylaws were last revised in 2020. So our committee is going to be taking a look at the bylaws and reviewing that, and the governance plan, as well as getting the input from the board, both from the input that was received before the board retreat earlier this year. And then as we go forward, we will be soliciting input and recommendations as we do our work. So the goal and the hope is to align on a recommendation to present to the full board that hopefully will be the framework for governance, including things like orientation of new members, and again, if there's any suggested changes to the bylaws to really present this framework for the oversight, and hopefully which will provide, mechanisms for more engagement and collaboration amongst the board. So our next meeting, we had 1 meeting already. Our next meeting is the week of October 9th, and we estimate, just given this nature of the work, that we'll probably be coming to the board with a recommendation in about 6 months is really what the goal is. So more to come, and we will continue to provide updates.
Right.
So thank you.
Thank you so much for the good work being done there. We'll continue on. Next area of focus is strategic planning. And I've asked Trustee Mitchke to give us an update on that.
Thank you. We are in the beginning stages of accomplishing this task, or starting this task, but we've had a bunch of preliminary research that has been done. So our mission is to review the current strategic plan and evaluate the effectiveness of the plan. And of course, the last strategic plan was done in about the 2008 timeframe. So we need to update that. We'll also interview facilitators and pick one that fits best for our organization. That will include developing scope of services and having them work with staff. Then we'll hold interviews with key stakeholders and bring the facilitator to the board for approval. A couple of things that we have done is looking at our old strategic plans that are dated. Is look at what other WFS boards have been doing, and frankly, most of them do not have their own separate strategic plans. There's a statewide strategic plan And then there's an operating plan that each local WFS has to provide by statute that implements the state strategic plan. That those operating plans are very, very detailed, and they're not really strategic plans. But the Gulf Coast, WFS Gulf Coast has a strategic plan along the lines of what I think most of us would think of as being appropriate for a board like ours. And I did get a chance to speak with the chair of that WFS board in the Gulf Coast today, and they have used a facilitator that they think very highly of. Outreach Strategies, the name of that facilitator. I don't know if any of you are aware of that group. So that would be someone we probably, when we get the committee together, want to review very, very carefully. We've also asked all the board members to identify any potential facilitators that they think might be good for us. And we didn't have any recommendations, although Lori knew of one facilitator that a lot of groups seem to use. I've had some experience with facilitators, and one that was really good is the one that was used by the Texas Association of School Boards. And I did check with the executive director, and he is very, very high on them and strongly recommends it. So that might be somebody else we consider. And then finally, Carter informed me that Judge Jenkins did not have a preference. We thought he might as to who would be a good facilitator to use. So we do need to hurry our cats together and have a real meeting in person. But there's quite a bit of work that's been done. And I guess the last thing I'll do is just go with this. The Gulf Coast WFS board using outreach strategies. I actually, in talking to Mark Guthrie, who's the chair of that board, I thought that the kind of work that he said that outreach did for them was to look for best practices around the country. And he did emphasize, as Lori did to me, that there are WFS boards outside the country, and some of them are high performing, but outreach strategies, in Mark's opinion, did a really good job of identifying best practices and other initiatives that boards are trying, including, for example, instead of having local offices that you pay rent on, is to instead find a community partner and occupies the space rent-free, where you have a community partner who's really trying to improve employment in the area. So at this point, we do need to convene a meeting and get moving, but there's been a lot of background work. I really appreciate the work that Lori and her team did in going through the archives. Again, almost, I did my internet search, and almost no one has a strategic plan at board level. They all just plug their operational plans into the state required plan. Thank you.
Thank you for your work on that.
Could I ask a question?
Of course.
Do you have a census or timeline of when you want to select the facilitator to then possibly begin the work?
Well, I will defer to Carter on that. And a lot of it, I think, depends on how close we are in the search area.
Got it.
Right, if we're close to having an executive director, successor on board, then it'd be really good to adjust our timing.
Understood. Okay.
Just want to point out, page 22, we put in at least a marker for a data-informed strategic planning. And that would be late this year. or early next year. So we thought maybe by January, you'd be ready to have them attend the first meeting of the 24 cycle. So that is in here. One more thing, the federal government did make, and this goes into Rebecca's report. They finally presented a TEGL, it's called. So it's a training guideline for outreach and how you can spend the money on outreach and how you cannot spend it. So we have something in writing that just arrived in the last 2 weeks. I was told it was my going away present by the, I'm not kidding, by the regional administrator. He said, you've asked for this forever and you've done it. It's not very helpful, but at least it's black and white guidelines of what we can do with the money to assist in outreach.
Okay, so I have one other question, I'm so sorry. Do we have a budget allotted to do this work?
Not been established yet.
But we can have a budget.
You have budget approval in February, actually. Ashley and I talked, and there's strategic planning and there's strategic planning. Some boards have spent as much as $1.5 million on strategic
Ours will be
planning.
under that.
Yeah, way up. And truthfully, the problem with strategic planning, not only the changing in workforce, but all our money comes from the state, 99% of it, and you kind of have to follow the money. You can't, you can have all the dreams in the world, but you kind of stick to the plan. But boards gave up a few years ago on strategic visioning. It's more practical and picking pieces that are not necessarily funded, like outreach, things that we can do, or partnerships, things that we can do without deviating from the script.
Thank you.
Great questions. I'll report on the last group, which is called outreach, and Rebecca unfortunately had a death in the family and had to be away. Otherwise she would be making this report, but we held a meeting last Friday, and the focus of the outreach is really to listen to the customer, to talk about the customer journey and examining our messaging and looking at our best practices and looking at the disparities that might occur between different job centers. So this will be a kind of roll up your sleeves group that will be visiting our workforce centers. And just like we did Redbird, and we're absolutely blown away for those of us that went to the Redbird. We couldn't get in the front door because there was a job fair, and that's what should be happening. Is you can't get in because people are coming to look for employment. Lynn had a training class there teaching workers on how to cable and wire for a big Amazon project. Great connection. So those are the kind of things that occur in our workforce centers, and we'll take those best practices and announce them and look for them in all of our centers. So look forward to continuing that. I will just thank you all for your extra work, your extra going and meeting on these committees. I think we just cover so much that it's imperative that we do a little deeper dive in these particular areas. So thank you all for your work on that and your comments. And with that, we'll move along. The next item on our agenda is the approval of the consent agenda. And what's in the consent agenda that I see is the minutes from the last meeting. I want to thank Deb for covering last meeting while I was away, doing some very important business on vacation. But I would take a motion that we accept the consent agenda.
Ken is a self.
You're way too late. You're just report on those 6 committees.
Who made the motion?
I made that.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right, any discussion regarding the minutes? If not, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, we approve the consent agenda. Now I'm going to move into a closed meeting regarding some personnel matters. I apologize to ask the audience to leave. We're just gonna have a brief board meeting, 30 minutes, or just the board to discuss our closed session items. So I apologize. We'll make it snappy, I promise.
But we actually, that's how you're thinking.
No, we did. They were in the
Oh, there was an action in a second. Did you say all in favor?
We have
Two votes left. Yes. You want to just leave with those?
Yeah. I'm gonna gavel us back in. Bill, you're gonna get appointed to some more committees. Okay, we've got a couple of votes that we need to take, in case we, lose our quorum. So, Dee, would you? There is no action from the closed session.
Are we ready to go? Well, good afternoon. I was afraid I was gonna say good morning. Hi, sorry for that. That's the hard part. I'm Demetria Robinson, Executive Vice President. We have two action items and they're listed on page 17 under contracts and agreements. I'm excited to report that we have secured all of our 2024 local match for the year. But thanks to all of our partners, Dallas College, Dallas ISD, City of Mesquite, City of Dallas, Urban ISD and Richardson ISD were our latest two since the board packet had been published. So I'm very excited. There's three ways we can obtain a local match. One is through donated funds from any private entity. The second is transferred funds from any public entity. And the third one is certification of expenditures from public entities. And all of ours have been secured by certification of expenditures from our partners. So thank you, partners. We have partners that's been with us for a long time. And it's always a stressful time. I feel we have a little bit over, probably a surplus of 250,000 that we'll be able to share with any other board area that might come short this year. So I'm very excited about that. Do you want to take action on that?
Let's do.
Okay.
All right, so you've heard the success, and at this point, we are looking for board authorization to accept the contribution of the local match agreements specified as part of the CCG FY24 contract, to provide direct care for eligible children effective October 1. So I would receive a motion for that. Okay. Second. All right, any abstentions?
The donors.
All right, Dan, the IC. All right. Any other discussion? All in favor? Anyone opposed? All right, pass. Thank you.
Our last item is the proposed budget for childcare groups FY 2024 childcare quality contract effective November 1st. Childcare group currently manages our childcare system services, including childcare quality, outlined by the Texas Rising Star Program. This budget consists of $3,670,000 for the management, operation, and coordination of all Texas Rising Star activities. These activities are not only provided for guidance and support, but also for some financial assistance to the early learning programs who are participating in the Texas Rising Star Program. $1,995,208 is specific to the mentoring and the coaching services of childcare group staff that helps these programs become TRS. These funds will help us increase the number of mentors since we're going to a mandatory Texas Rising Star program. We have very little flexibility with that set amount of dollars. It is specific to the mentoring services, and so childcare group will increase their mentors from 12 to about 20 to maximize that funding.
The caseload will increase. Tori mentioned earlier in the public, comment that the Texas Rising Star, providers are increasing, with the status because we're mandatory. It's a requirement for them to become Texas Rising Star to be part of the subsidy program. So that will help the influx of participation expected due to that requirement. Although we received an increase in, mentor funding, yesterday at Texas Workforce Commissioners meeting, the commissioners approved the FY 2024 board childcare allocation and targets that indicated a 7% decrease in our childcare funding. So the 3.6 million that is going for the management and operation and coordination of those services is aligned with the 7% decrease compared to last year's budget. So with that, any questions?
Okay. All right, so would you read the recommendation?
Board authorization to contract with the existing childcare quality contractor, Childcare Group, at cost not to exceed $5,665,208 as specified effective November 1st. And this is pending the receipt of the grant for DWC.
Thank you, Dee. Can I get a motion? All right, Bill, and a second? Second. All right, abstentions? Any other abstentions? Okay. Any other discussion? I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, motion passes.
The next is a discussion. Do we want to move on to the action item?
I want to touch on it if y'all don't mind. I can go very quickly.
Let me just point out something before you do that. While we were out, one of our commissioners has lived in the back of the room. Commissioner Daniel, would you stand up, chair the commission? And so he's here all the way from Austin to visit us. So everyone, please behave. This is the Texas Workforce Commission. So thank you. Thanks for being here.
I've introduced him many times and he gets nervous when I promise people he is so entertaining. But Stephen's already told me how much we like his video. We're going to dig in a little deeper in TANF. This was to answer Rebecca's question specifically, but I want to touch on it today because there's a lot of good material in here and clarification. So on page 18, the kinds of clients we serve, and I hope you'll take a moment. The TANF applicant is normally who we talk about, but there's the mandatory that's a policing job. There's the sanction, that's getting people back on benefits. Conditional applicants, people who may or may not survive the process. Exempt, and I'll talk about exempt and choices plus. The next page tells you who an exempt person is. And I think this is helpful. A grandparent receiving on behalf of an eligible child, a person providing care to a disabled child, a person who is disabled, or a person who is pregnant, parenting, and a first child, age 12. So go to the next, I think we go to page 21, just to get us there. And I'll tell you what we've got. This is a new chart, and in fact, the chart is in error, and I appreciate Echoes calling this out because it only makes the story a lot richer. We need to change the block that says TANF applicant from 91 to 374. Wow. And that percentage is 32%. There is a glitch in the counting system, and we will get back to that, but that's why there were not correct numbers. Also, that is now 18% of the activity. All told, and I know you concentrate on the denominator of 100 people, right? We've had that discussion. It's very annoying. This past year, and we're not through yet, we have served 2,031 people who fall in all these categories. It's a much different story than anything we were talking about. So I want to get that on the table. If y'all have additional questions, and for Rebecca's sake, we'll meet with her offline. Whatever you need to know, we can find it. And there's a lot of people benefiting from these services. I've also included all the services at the bottom that Echoes provides, what the staffing is all about, and then the allocation of cost above staffing. But Ashley prepared a lot of that, and we thank them. He also touched on a 7% reduction. We are faced with losing $9 million in child care, and as all of you know, we pushed it all the way to the limit for the end of October to spend out, and that may not have been the smartest thing we've ever done. So we're now, we knew we were not going to start enrolling again until about April, but now we're unsure that we will be enrolling next year. unless the attrition meets the budget. So just hand that to you. Dee, proceed. We're done.
I'm done, it's Connie's turn.
It's Connie, let's go. Super fast.
Thank you,
Okay.
Dee.
Good afternoon. Connie Rash, Senior Vice President. I'm presenting procurement policy and external grants agreements. If you'll look at page 22 of your board packet. Starting with legal services, we issued procurement in August. We received 2 responsive proposals by the deadline. The 2 firms were Barnes and Thornburg, as well as Taylor Olson, Atkins, Sorella, and Elin. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing any of this, but due to the significance of this service, the evaluation team requested additional information to conduct a thorough review. So we will reevaluate the information received and make a recommendation in October.
The current agreement goes through December, correct?
Yes.
So we are not in jeopardy. Thank
That's correct. Moving on, upcoming procurements, I've listed all the ones we have coming up. The first one being strategic planning, management of childcare services, and that's the management and operation of childcare, which is the childcare group is our current contractor. Automated procurement system. Something new is encouraging employer engagement, and we're looking at some upskilling opportunities and other opportunities for employers. Lastly, vendor services, and that includes all of our vendor services like for the workforce centers. So it could include a locksmith, janitorial, that kind of thing. So there's no action to be taken on procurement. Moving on to policy, real fast. There's no local flexibility to the policies. There are state policies looking at, last month we presented rescinding local policies, but there was a delay in implementation of the state system. So that's on hold for right now, but we'll update you with any new policy changes. The child care provider rates, TWC issued guidance 2023 with the Texas Child Care Market Rate Survey. And we're looking at just fully implementing that. Reemployment services and eligibility assessment. That's called REFI. REFI is a federal grant program that allows states to provide intensive reemployment assistance to individuals receiving UI. And this policy offers guidance to local boards for documentation, program activities, exemptions, and claimant outreach. So, and lastly, I know this is exciting. WIOA Youth Program Elements Update. And the biggest thing on this, the state provides clarification as far as using self-attestation. So for some youth that may not have all the documents, this allows them to sign self-attestating that they have the documents, and they'll bring it in later. But that's a big movement. So the recommendation is board authorization to approve the policy changes as is presented.
Quick question of clarification.
Yeah.
What are we approving if we have no local flexibility?
We must adopt their policies and recognize that we're passing them down to our contractors so that we're not in any jeopardy. We will put these forward as our policies now for these specific actions. It's required. Let's do something else. What would you like to do? The chairman's here. We can talk him into it.
Yeah, thanks for being so compliant today. Could I have a motion?
I'm looking for.
All right, Bill makes a motion. Second,
They're not so eager on this one.
Kia,
Second.
Nikia's second. Any discussions? Any abstentions? I don't know what you're abstaining from, but that's why I asked. All in favor? One opposed? All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
And one last thing, we have external grants, and they're presented on page 23. We have a new grant, South Dallas Fair Park Opportunity Fund. This is partnering with the Regional and Hispanic Contractors Association. We'll develop an MOU within 60 days if they're funded, and that's for training such as blueprint writing and other things. The next grant was National Science Foundation. We're supporting Dallas College and Tarrant County College And this is to offer opportunities in semiconductor industry. And we also partnered with the AARP Foundation. We have an existing partnership, but this is kind of expanding things to allow 3 individuals to be co-located at the River Center. So that it's a great partnership. Everything else I presented previously. So that's all we can.
Another point of clarification, why Tarrant County?
We work well as a region, and Dallas College and Tarrant County work well together.
So this is a
Yeah.
coordinated effort.
Yes, we didn't put them together.
Correct.
Yes.
It's us and we bought it.
Got it, thank you.
I'm just worried about the law firm that's from Fort Worth, okay? I mean, I understand my marching orders.
Okay, so that's all I had. Board authorization to ratify support for the grant applications presented.
Motion for that?
Second.
Okay.
All right. That's one abstention, any other?
She was the one.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, thank you, Connie. Richard, run, Richard, run.
I'm ready.
I'll be quick, I know we're short on time. So, good afternoon, my name is Richard Brett, I'm the, senior research and data.
Richard, how many measures did we not meet this month?
Just one.
Thank you, Richard.
Reemployment within 10 weeks, it's, we're still not meeting, it is regional, Tarrant and North Central are also not meeting, so I'll leave it at that. I will point out that at a glance, has all the performance for all the other boards, so give that a look, and, you know, we'll be able to see. The Clayton reemployment seems to be hitting some of the larger areas, El Paso, San Antonio, Austin, rural capital, as well as other DFW boards. But we're doing what we can to get people engaged as soon as we can. Hopefully we'll be able to turn that around. Maybe next performance year. So,
There was one very big conversation we were having though. We're looking backwards as the state and the federal government require us to do. So we get performance from, right now we're looking at, July of 21 to June of 22. If you remember, that was still thick in the weeds when it came to COVID. For that period alone, Richard and I know that we placed, and this is verified by state records, unemployment records, and employer reports to the Secretary of State. In 1 year, 11,532, and that was at the end of the pandemic. This year, Richard, what do you think we'll do?
I think we can, and I believe you mean our current or next year's performance year.
Right.
I think we can
Mature.
at least, meet or exceed that, percentage. Already I took a look into the performance to see what's there. So I went from July 22 to March 23, and it came up with 5,897 CNT participants, which means career and training participants. They're enrolled in one of those activities. So,
None of this is self-attestation.
No.
None of this is catching. Now, we don't get all of the reports from the job fairs, correct? Because not everybody at the job fair enrolls with us. So this is what's coming through the centers and the other like Red, White, and You and the youth event, we just count the heads, but we don't get to count the jobs until the employers report them. It's a hard system to explain to private sector because I can't tell you what we did last quarter, but I can tell you what we did from 21 to 22. And that's how the feds want it. They want to know that the data sticks and that you can say that 2 months, 2 quarters after someone's been served, they're working. And isn't that a better thing than what were they doing yesterday? So I hate that it's that bad, but we wanted to bring that to your attention. It's one of the reasons that the numbers are not always clear to everyone.
So just so I'm clear, what
Yes.
you're saying is that over a year period, 11,332 people found jobs through our system.
yes.
In a bad year.
Well, I think that's. Let's get 200.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're still employed. All right, great.
So if there's no more questions, I'll just touch on the economic snapshot,
Yeah.
or would you rather I?
I want Ashley to go through financials real quick.
Okay, thank you.
Run, Richard, run.
These meetings are not supposed to be this much
I
fun.
know, I'm sorry. Give me a chair.
Good afternoon, I'm Ashley Miller, Chief Financial Officer and Executive Vice President. Financial items begin on page 12 of your board packet this month. And we start with our federal and state funding comparison 2023 versus 2024. Quite a few of our grants end in September and October each year, so it's a good time to take a look at variances in budgets for grants that we received both years. You'll see at the top of the page that we are projecting a 1.3% decrease overall in all grants. However, as with most things, workforce and life in general, budgets are a bit fluid and constantly changing. Between the time we prepared this table and today, TWC recommended to reduce the initially approved 2024 child care budget across the state by almost $90 million. Dallas's share of that reduction is our normal 10% at about $9 million, which makes our overall reduction at the top of the page more like 6.5%, based on the most current information that we have. TWC does plan to conduct a mid-year review of childcare, and we asked childcare group to rerun their forecast based on this new budget information. As Sherry mentioned to you all last month, we absolutely will need to keep a constant eye on that forecast based on upcoming childcare changes. But currently, all else equal, if we do not reopen enrollments until May of 2024, the current projected funding will suffice. Now, the asterisk on the far left of the page represents grant agreements we have already received. So of course, we haven't yet received those childcare grant agreements from the state, but they should be coming soon. We have received several of those 2024 grants at this point, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have about those budgets at this time.
You restate the change, the reduction, 6 point.
6.5%.
In the childcare arena.
It's due to the childcare reduction, but I'm talking about this top right percent of change for all totals.
6.5. But we will survive.
Yes, $9 million reduction
Yes, I should
is
say
what
don't
we're,
survive.
we will survive. We have a $9 million reduction is what TWC put out to us. And in 1 month, we are spending about $11 million. This childcare grant runs 13 months, and I've mentioned to you all before that we really like those because we have that carryover month to fully spend on a prior year. So we have less than a month that we are projecting to not.
Very tight on this much money, very tight. If we had $1 million, we couldn't do 2 full weeks. So that's how tight it is.
Can I ask one more question? Yes, thank you. So just to think if I pick up on this, then we would not anticipate reopening childcare enrollment until May of 2024.
Currently, that's what we're thinking, but there are lots of things going on with that forecast. All the proposed changes from TWC and when they take place, so we'll just have to keep an eye. Right now, we're thinking May 2024.
So it's quality conversation over quantity, more money to the vendor per child for quality training. It can possibly be the issue of paying in advance as the system requires. So instead of paying after the fact, that will cost us more on the front end. And then reducing the parent share of costs potentially because they're going to standardize across the state. And that could make our costs go up. So I'm saying I don't know that we reopen next year. I mean,
Might not at all.
we need to watch every element and it depends on who attrits. If a lot of babies attrit, that saves more money. So this is a tough year and I don't think any of us expected it to have this kind of a break. But
And so basically what that means, the interest list, which we're calling it, which is now at north of 6,000, is probably gonna get a lot.
Yes.
where is it really, Richard?
65.
No, I think it's
was in the
way
packet.
more. No, the 65 was,
That was at the beginning of.
It's 9 as of yesterday, the 65.
oh, okay, that is it. Thank you. I expected to hit 10,000, but people will drop off because no one's responding. I mean, we're responding, but we can't say come and join us.
Right.
Yeah, right. So
it's not a waiting list because, well, you'd be waiting a lot.
Yes.
Anything else, Ashley?
Nothing else for me to report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other reports?
Monitoring, another important part of your work is making, and it's a real quick.
Run, Becky, run.
Yeah, can't do it without glasses.
No, I cannot. Good afternoon, I'm Becky Knapp, quality manager and EO officer for the board. I would like to give a couple of brief updates on the program and fiscal monitoring, as this is a very important part of what we do. If you look at page 32, we'll start with program monitoring. The Dallas College review and the ECLIS SNAP and TANF reviews are all complete and pending the monitoring reports. We actually just received the reports from SNAP and TANF, and I'll be able to discuss those at the October meeting. We haven't had a chance to review them yet. Regarding the fiscal reviews, the following reviews are ongoing: ECLIS, Dallas College, and Wilkinson Center. The review for childcare group is complete and the report will be forthcoming. I will also discuss that in more detail in the October meeting. We work very closely with the contractors to ensure a clear understanding of the monitoring requirements. And Christine Wynn, our monitor, has done a good job taking on the program monitoring as well as continuing with fiscal. If you look at the bottom of page 32, after the chart, the board's currently working with TWC audit resolution on 2 issues from the last annual monitoring review regarding the SNAP and TANF. And you'll also see that TWC has conducted a testing on improper payments for childcare, with 1 issue resulting in a very small overpayment of $53, and this will be refunded to TWC. Are there any questions?
And that's on a sampling of all the eligibility that childcare group has done.
$53.
That's a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
I thought we do it at Kenny's. And not all of them are that easy.
Okay, I just want to point out that I'm surrounded by 2 Catholics who pointed out that there's liquor in the room. So I'm going to vote for adjournment. Thank you all for being here. We're going to have a celebration in 30 minutes. So hang out and help us celebrate.
Not yet. 30 minutes. Somewhere. I was